for coming. Special thanks to Senator Murray, Coons, and Murphy for joining me. So we have a busy 2 weeks ahead of us as we work together to avoid an unnecessary government shutdown, provide critical aid to our allies in Ukraine and Israel, including humanitarian assistance to innocent civilians in Gaza that need food, water, shelter. The outcome of all of this hangs on one word, bipartisanship. Unfortunately, a group of Senate Republicans released a radical border security proposal that's a non-starter in the Senate. No discussion with any Democrat, no inkling of bipartisanship. Instead of putting together common sense border policies that can pass in divided government, Senate Republicans basically copied and pasted the House's radical H.R. 2 bill, all at the expense of Ukrainian freedom, independence, democracy. Taking Ukraine funding hostage in exchange for hard right border policies make this fight much harder for us to help Ukraine in their fight against Putin. We're still resolute. We want to get it done. But every day the Republicans delay is another win for Putin. Large segments of both parties in the Senate support Ukraine. So we should be coming together to show our support, not just pushing political proposals that will only further endanger Ukraine. And many of those pushing the proposals are not even for Ukraine aid. So what are we talking about? Today is also a very important day in the Senate. Today we will confirm 2 more district judges. And I'm so happy and so proud that today we will confirm our 100th female judge and our 150th judge confirmed under President Biden. That's really a great record. 150 judges who have brought integrity and impartiality to the bench, 150 judges who have expanded the diversity and dynamism of our courts, 150 judges who are restoring Americans' trust in the federal judiciary. We're making the bench look more like America. It never did. And we're making giant strides, more than any other Senate has, to get that done. Let me put it in perspective. As of tonight, the Senate will have confirmed 100 women to the federal bench, nearly double that of President Trump's whole first term, and more than the full first term of any president. These nominees, and we're only halfway through, these nominees are all historic, taken together. Many are historic in their own right, the first black woman to the Supreme Court, the first Muslim woman to the federal bench, and much, much more. The Senate's now confirmed more women of color to the bench than any Senate under any previous president, even for an 8-year period. And we aren't done. We'll continue to advance qualified judicial confirmation on the floor in the coming weeks. Senator Murray.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. A few things to make clear at the top. Any partisan proposal that seeks to revive a Trump border wall and demands sweeping far-right immigration policies which run counter to our values as Americans is headed nowhere in the Senate as far as I'm concerned. If Republicans do want to have a serious conversation about a border, that is welcome. But that starts with keeping our focus on ideas that can actually get widespread bipartisan support, like addressing the root causes of migration, something almost entirely absent from their proposal, and meeting our operational needs. Next, I am very glad to see that colleagues on both sides recognize we must pass one comprehensive package with resources to our allies in Israel, in Ukraine, and the Indo-Pacific, and humanitarian aid to those who are caught in the conflict. I spoke about this earlier today when I opposed a bill from Republicans that left far too much work undone by only funding Israel. Bottom line, we cannot be pitting these priorities against each other and telling the world we see some allegiances as urgent and others as political leverage. Our allies in Ukraine can no more afford a delay than our allies in Israel. Ukraine is at a critical point in a brutal war to defend its sovereignty against Putin's bloody invasion. We must not give Putin a win and throw Ukraine to the wolves for political expediency. After all, what sort of message does it send about our commitment to our allies if we delay Ukraine any further, especially after we already missed an earlier opportunity to get this done? We cannot just do half our jobs here, leaving out any of those priorities out. And we cannot kick the can down the road. It would be a serious failure in American leadership. I'm continuing to work on a bipartisan package to meet all of these critical needs. And I want to say this as well. We also have to address the expiration of child care stabilization funding, which is exactly why I'm holding a hearing tomorrow to discuss more of the President's supplemental funding request, particularly regarding child care and our needs at the southern border. Now, we cannot pretend that child care is any less urgent than any of the other challenges we face. For every single parent, child care is a do-it-now problem, not a do-it-next-again problem. We need to treat it the same way, as urgent and as essential. I saw reporting just yesterday in the Washington Post that covered what the expiration of the child care stabilization funds means for families and communities across our country. That reporting drew a straight line from the expiration of those federal dollars to a struggling child care provider in business for 18 years, forced to shut down, to a mom with 2 young boys and a newborn who then was forced to leave her job full-time. She lost her child care. And finally to her employer, a dental practice in a small town that is now down to a dental assistant, meaning they can now only serve half their patients. Childcare is infrastructure. It couldn't be more plain. We have to start investing in childcare with the same level of bipartisan commitment we showed with our other infrastructure when we passed the bipartisan infrastructure law. But in the meantime, we've got to shore up these stabilization funds to keep the childcare industry, which holds up every other sector of our economy, from crumbling. The childcare crisis is a ticking clock. It's more than a ticking clock. It is an alarm bell that's ringing. I don't know how many more ways I can say this, but I am going to keep saying it until it sinks in and that we take action. This is an issue for families, for providers, and for employers in virtually every single community every day. So until we solve it, my colleagues are going to keep hearing about this from me constantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Coombs.
Thank you, Senator Schumer and Senator Murray. Thank you, Chair Murray, for leading our Appropriations Committee as we move forward on the task before us, which is to finish an appropriations process. In the meantime, our President has sent up broad supplemental requests that deal with urgent national security and domestic issues. As Senator Murray laid out, we need to invest in childcare. We need to respond to unfunded disaster response. But I'll briefly focus on the supplemental that makes clear the urgency of investing in Ukraine's defense, in securing our border, in humanitarian needs around the world, and in coming to Israel's aid. A month ago, Hamas carried out a horrific attack that took the lives of 1,400 Israeli civilians, including more than 30 Americans. Today, families continue to suffer through knowing that their family members are Hamas hostages beneath Gaza. There was just a move earlier today to try and move only aid to Israel on the floor of the Senate. And a dozen of us came to the floor in support of Senator Murray's effort to oppose that move, because aid to Ukraine is every bit as vital and urgent. Winter is coming. And in the last winter, Putin showed a relentless focus on attacking civilian infrastructure that was intended to leave millions of Ukrainians in the dark and the cold. There is strong bipartisan support for sending military equipment, hardware, and aid to Ukraine. One of the questions our colleagues are raising is, but why support the Ukrainian government and why provide humanitarian relief? Because just as surely as failing to provide the weapons the defenders of Ukraine need to push back on Russia, we need to continue to support the government that funds the first responders to every attack, that funds the rebuilding of infrastructure after every attack, and that ensures there is a vibrant Ukraine for the future. The President's supplemental request also includes $13.6 billion for the border for 1 year. That would be the single greatest investment in border security in the history of our country. And rather than dismissing it out of hand, my hope is our Republican colleagues will look at it as the serious proposal it is. Last, there are more than 50 countries around the world that have come to the aid of Ukraine and are bearing the burden alongside us. In fact, in the case of welcoming refugees and humanitarian aid, they're doing more than we are. There's more than 50 countries around the world that rely on our assistance to deal with a global problem with famine and hunger. That is another critical part of this supplemental. We should not break it apart. We should take it up as a package. We should negotiate in good faith and earnest this week exactly what it will take to get that done, but we should not leave without delivering this package of critical aid. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Leader Schumer. I want to thank Chair Murray for keeping us laser-like focused on our job, which is to deliver a budget for the American people every year on time. And while the American public are absolutely supportive of our continued commitment to Ukraine, they want us to be there with Israel in her time of need. They also want us to be looking out for their bottom lines as well. And this imperative of getting money to families who are at risk of losing their child care slots is of critical importance to the people that I represent. Let me just say a word or two about Ukraine and the path forward. Every week, Ukrainian forces fire anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 artillery shells in defense of their position and as part of their slow but successful counteroffensive. The top military official at NATO said recently that right now, the bottom of the barrel is now visible when it comes to the artillery, when it comes to the ammunition that Ukraine needs to defend itself. We are talking soon about empty rifles, and we are making a decision as we speak in the next several weeks about whether Kyiv will be, this time next year, a Ukrainian city or a Russian city. That is how serious the decision we are making is about our support for Ukraine. Now, I'm sorry that my Republican colleagues have decided to tie immigration reform to our battle against Vladimir Putin. I wish we could just agree that it is better off for the United States for Ukraine to be sovereign and independent. But we are at a moment in which Republicans are piling on extra demands as a way and a means to frustrate this process. And like Senator Schumer, I am open to talking to my Republican colleagues and have been talking to my Republican colleagues about a path forward. But let's be clear, their proposal from last night is not helpful. And if we are going to find a path forward on immigration reform, it is going to necessitate Republicans understanding that this will have to be a targeted, lean package to try to make the situation at the border better, and it will have to involve Republican and Democratic priorities. We've done tough things before. Last summer, in a matter of 30 days, we turned around a bipartisan proposal to change American gun laws, but it did both of those two things. It involved priorities from both sides, and it was targeted enough to be able to get 60 votes in the Senate and pass the House of Representatives. If we are going to find a path forward on Ukraine, if we are going to get Republican support, then we've got to move fast and we've got to move smart. And I thank Senator Murray and Senator Schumer for leading the way on this work.
Thank you, Senator Murphy. And first, the first question is going to go to somebody we are very glad to see back and amidst us, a very fine reporter and a very fine person. Miss, are your real name Theodore? Edward Barrett, known as Ted. Welcome. You get the first question.
You're very kind. Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to actually just get a sense of the path forward of CR. If the House sends over something like that, fill in and spending cuts, something like that, we can just vote to strip that out and send it back to them at the end of the day.
Look, we want to get a CR done as quickly as possible. And again, as I said at the beginning of my remarks, bipartisanship is the word. Just one side passing a bill just with one party and sending it over is not going to be a very good way to move things forward. So we hope we can get, the four corners are talking, and we hope we can get bipartisan agreement to move forward as quickly as possible.
Leader Schumer, on the list of the border proposal from Republicans, are you amenable to including any of that inside the supplemental, or are you open to negotiating that at all, or is that Is that
We,
not supporting-
as I said, we are open to talking about border, but it has to be bipartisan. They just sort of plucked things out of H.R. 2, which they knew was unacceptable, didn't talk to a single Democrat and said, hey, take it or leave it. The good news is there are some Republicans, we believe, who do want to get Ukraine done. In fact, a majority of this body wants to get Ukraine done, and who are willing to talk about a true bipartisan deal on border. We're not going to get everything we like. They're not going to get everything they like, as Chris Coons mentioned. The president put some very serious border things in his supplemental proposal, but we need to talk in a bipartisan way. Yes, Sil. Okay, again, we have to get a bipartisan agreement. We'd like to get a CR done as quickly as possible. That's what we think. And go ahead. Nope, I called on her.
Do you believe that at this point, Democrats need to move on when and how quickly?
Okay. Well, as I've said to you umpteen times here, it's up to the Republicans. It's Tuberville's a Republican. They should put pressure on him to change. And now patience on both sides of the aisle, including with Republicans, you saw what happened on the floor Wednesday night, is wearing thin. So we hope we can get these changes done. We hope that the Republicans will get Tuberville to back off, but we will get it done. We will do everything we can to get it done as soon as possible. We've Senator Reid talking to me. We helped craft a proposal, and Amy Klobuchar has scheduled it for a vote in the Rules Committee, not this week, but next week. Yes.
Are you concerned at all by the new New York Times poll showing President Biden trailing former President Trump in 5 key battleground states?
I believe President Biden will win the election. He will beat President Trump. And I believe that all of the good things that President Biden has done, the people are learning about it week by week and state by state. I believe that President Biden will win the election over President Trump. Yes, way back there. Union. Yes. Yeah, well, look, obviously we have to make the Capitol secure. We're good that the Capitol Police, it's good that they found this person, but we're keeping a constant vigilance on security. Look, I believe that I'm for a ban on assault weapons. I wrote that law years ago, and I just hope we can get enough Republican votes finally to pass something like that. Thank you, everybody.